So ready.
Get this done, huh?
Rob, what do they recommend? 3 or 5 for torching?
I like 5. You know, how sensitive are your eyes? You know, as long as you have them protected, as far as how bright it is, it's kind of relatively personal.
There's 5 over here if you guys want them.
But I really want to focus on the safety side of how to set one up if you ever get into that situation, or you have customers, you know, how do I do this properly, how do I do this safely? Again, I start with oxygen first. First thing I want to do is just do a visual inspection. I don't know why, but some people have this fetish with, they got their nasty gloves on, and they take the cylinder off, and they grab the threads, and I don't know if they're checking for burrs or what they're doing, but fell in the grease pit, and I picked it up and, you know, kind of shook it off, wiped it off with my greasy, nasty rag. Yep, good enough. Because once I put this on there, now I've contained all that in this system. So I have fuel of some sort. So what else do I need to make fire? Got all kinds of oxygen. So then what? One more component, ignition. Where does that come from? 80+% of the shops I go into, this is one of the safety things that's never done properly. So every regulator is going to have a pressure adjusting knob, screw, something, because if you think about the regulator very simply, it's like a dam. Okay, I've got a wall in there. I've got, let's say, 2,000 psi-ish. I don't know what they all are, but roughly 2,000, and I'm going to be running 30, 40 psi, give or take. So I've got this wall in there. 2,000 psi comes in, stops at the wall. I take my pressure adjusting knob or screw, I turn that up, I lift my wall up until it lets 40 psi come out. If I need 50, I lift that wall a little bit farther. If the wall is already up, when I crack that valve and I go from 2,000 to 40, now I have friction. There's some heat, maybe just enough to ignite that grease or whatever's in there. And once it started, so that's why we want to make sure we don't have any contamination in there. What I always tell people, real fancy terminology, quarter grain. You don't need a 3-foot cheater bar on a rim to tighten up a regulator. All right, so I've got my regulator on my oxygen. Same thing with acetylene. Quick visual. At this point, I can safely open the cylinder valve if I make sure I've got my pressure adjusting knobs backed up. Each step of the process, I will purge. I'll, do a quick blast on cylinders, purge those out. Purge this to make sure I got nothing in the regulator, and work it all the way down the line. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep going, but that's one step that I would also do if I had like a field setup. The other thing I run into a lot is these hoses. When they wrap them around, they get pulled real tight and they flex right at that. That's a great place for leak to start. A lot of people have always heard the dish soap and water for finding air leaks. Works great on air leaks. Don't get it near oxygen. All right, again, it's a hydrocarbon, it can burn. You guys sell leak test solution designed for oxygen environments. These little tiny ones, I can't tell you how many accidents have happened in the industry because these guys have it on the torch and they're manipulating and all this other stuff, and it's constantly flexing right there, and their arm is getting saturated with oxygen. The right spark gets the right place, and now it's a flame. The fuel gas nuts have a little slash at the point of the hex for left-handed threads, so you can't mix them up because they are the same diameter and pitch. Because a lot of times what will happen is if I take this and now I just cinch these up, these want to spin on me. So one of the tricks that we'll do sometimes is just stand on the hose, just enough to put a little bit of tension on it, and then we can tighten that up without the hoses twisting up on us. This is the attachment set that comes in the contender, the heavy duty. We took wrench flats off the attachment because if you put wrench flats on it, people are going to put a wrench on it, which I don't know why we haven't taken wrench flats off the rest of them. The easiest thing to do is if there are O-rings in the attachment, hand tight. If it's metal to metal, like the tip on the front here, then you put a wrench on it. Just check out all these safety features. The handle flips over, so you can get at the valve to replace it. I got rid of the wrench flats, so that doesn't mean get a pair of channel locks, it means just use your hands. So hand tight O-ring. And then for your tip nut, again, that's all metal to metal. So So I want to make sure I snug that up good. That's another common place for leaks to happen. You know, if they've been rolling around their toolbox, they get a little dent or a little burr or something in there and it doesn't seat properly, they'll pull in atmosphere through that little tiny leak, and then they can get popping from that as well. Put the cylinder between you and the regulator when you're going to crack that valve. When I'm the one pulling the trigger, I'm responsible for anybody else in this room. If I do this and something bad happens and flames go shooting that way, or something goes shooting that way, I gotta be responsible for those people. Pressure adjusting knobs. I will check these things so many times, because that's the one thing I wanna always make sure I never miss. And if somebody had it buried, it might feel like it's loose, but double check that. I'm just gonna crack the cylinder nice and easy, because if something bad happens, I wanna be able to shut it off real fast. So I'm gonna peek around, make sure that on my source side I've got pressure. So I've got pressure up to the wall. So now, how far do I open my oxygen cylinder?
All the way.
All the way in line.
It's a double-seated valve.
Double seated valve. So I'm not gonna get proper flow if I don't open it up all the way. So the same thing with acetylene. I've never heard of an acetylene regulator burnout, but I'm not gonna be the first one to be in front of it when it happens. Every cylinder I open, whether it's a flow meter, a regulator, anything, I do the same procedure. I put the cylinder in between me and the regulator, make sure that's backed out, nice and easy. I've got incoming pressure, so I'm good. I've got pressure up to the wall. How far do I open my acetylene or fuel gas valve? We were always taught more than a quarter, less than a full. So usually what I'll do is when I know it's loose, I'll bring it back to where I just start feeling resistance on that valve seat, pick a lobe, give it a half a turn, I'm good. I gotta set my delivery pressure to my system. So where do I set it at?
Depends. Look at your sheet.
Depends on what I'm doing. So I have to know.
You're so smart.
You have to know what size tip you're using. In this case, it's a size 0. If I look at a number 0 cutting tip, what should my oxygen pressure be? So 30 to 35. So we'll just go with 30. So 30, if I take my pressure adjusting screw, but I want to make sure I'm setting that with flowing pressure, not static pressure. Because depending on the size of the line, the length of the line, that can have an effect on that. So I'll open up my valves, make sure I'm set at 30 flowing pressure, and I shut my valves off. Now I want to always do these separate. I don't want to do both gases at the same time, so I can actually get get reverse flow of gases, which is why we have check valves built into them to help prevent that. But the thing with check valves and flashbacks, you got to remember they're just mechanical devices. So just like a seatbelt, they've been tested thousands and thousands of times, but there's no guarantee yours is going to work when it happens. Okay, acetylene pressure.
3 to 5.
3 to 5. There we go. All right. So we're going to go with 4. Open my fuel gas valve. Ornery today. So, all right. So now I'm at a point where I've set my flowing pressures. I'm ready to actually light it. Make sure I've got my proper PPE. Oxygen first, oxygen first, oxygen first, right? We've been preaching that all day.
Tell this.
So this is the only exception to our oxygen first rule. If things are set up properly, and I use the tip to determine what my pressures are supposed to be set at, and actually set my pressures properly, when I'm done adjusting this, my fuel gas valve is going to be all the way open, and I'm going to adjust my oxygen valve to it. And what you'll notice, I'm going to turn the fuel gas on very low, fired up, and you're going to see the little black floaties. But then as I turn that up, they're going to go away. And then I'm going to bring that up. And then I'm going to bring my oxygen in. Get that neutral flame where those points come together. So I'll bring that fuel gas back up again. And just kind of keep walking that up until my fuel gas valve is open. And then hit my cutting lever. Point spread out again a little bit. Bring those nice and tight together. So now I've got a good neutral flame for cutting. And we'll hold the flame on the edge until it turns a nice cherry red, and then you hit that oxygen, and it'll blast through. And what you're doing is you're very rapidly oxidizing the steel. That's all that's happening.
Get that nice and hot.